Cut that channel now, we're done watching them gloat, Vol snapped. The command deck dimmed as the feed from the Concord Coalition's victory broadcast winked out. Rows of officers hunched over kinetic relay boards and vector mapping plates, their fingers hovering, waiting. Neptune's magnetic interference gridded the edges of every transmission. The walls creaked as if pressure itself recoiled from what was building in the chamber. Commander Dayrick Vol stepped forward, casting a long shadow across the central display table. His face was lined, weathered, not from age but calculation. Years of forecasting a war that no one believed would come had etched that map into his bones. Now it had arrived, exactly as predicted. They've committed all primary fleets, he said, eyes flicking to Sarn Halvek without needing to say more. Cross-check mass entries from Jupiter's drag points. Confirm their rotational splits. Halvek adjusted the thermal overlay unit beside him. Targets match. 93 species, 10,000 vessels. All traffic patterns indicate full assault trajectories. No reserves detected. Drav Lorn grunted from the left flank station. Suicidal overconfidence. They want this done in a single display. They want to humiliate us, Vict added coldly, scanning the encrypted trace reports. Not destroy? Not yet. Vol didn't blink. Good. That means they'll chase bait. Above them, a glacial groan of the outer hull responding to gravitational distortion carried through the beams. A physical reminder of the weight pressing in from all sides. The room smelled of carbon-coated circuits and recycled starch. Tactical sweat clung to the collar. Sarn tapped in a new query. 48 minutes until coordinated orbital compression. Let them come, Vol replied. He moved to the center of the command table, where the visual grid of the Sol system pulsed in red and gray. A kinetic map layered with gravity tide lines, known asteroid patterns, and echo signatures from old colonial hardware. No laser plasma graphics, no dramatic overlays, just raw variables. Nothing performative, everything functional. We are not Earth's last defense, he said slowly. We are its final memory, and that memory will burn into the ones who thought we would kneel. The officers exchanged no words, but their stances changed, subtle but aligned. Vol raised a sealed data token from his chest pocket and placed it onto the magnetic reader pad. Authenticate, Operation Ashfall, he said. A sound like breaking glass. Compressed ice, perhaps, clicked across the room as circuits shifted into locked alignment. Redundant AI nodes were overridden, control chains rerouted into manual authentication mode. Time-locked subroutines queued, Halvek confirmed. Sublunar payload chains synced to Mars tracking grid, Lorn added. Seismic wells responding. Vict was already scanning the predictive loops. Echo frames ready, 39 active vectors. The map updated again. Dozens of seemingly random pings flickered to life. Old trade beacons, abandoned mining relays, orbital junk clusters. Each had a purpose. Each a key to a lock no one outside this room knew existed. We have 36 minutes, Vol said. Initiate grid masking, bury the hand until it's too late to retract. Grid masking initiated, Halvek replied, fingers dancing across his control plate. Decoy pathways active, power signatures scrambled to mimic tertiary mining rigs. Vict nodded. Civilian broadcasts on loop. Disinformation frames loaded, playing refugee cries from phantom pods. The hum of emotion that often followed news of evacuation didn't rise. These men knew the truth. There were no civilians left. Earth had been scoured. There were no innocents to save. Only illusions designed to trigger mercy in the enemy. And that mercy would be their undoing. Lorn activated the Martian synchronizers. Heat signatures stabilized, thermogenic cores buried under the crust. Set to trigger on any surface penetration attempt. Europa's shells? Vol asked. Calibrated, Vict confirmed. The terraformers will broadcast environmental distress while hiding the inversion cannons beneath ice vent echoes. Halvek paused, eyes narrowing. We're not just fighting to win. We're baiting them into dancing on a minefield. We're not fighting at all, Vol replied, voice steel flat. We're setting architecture to erase them. Outside the command chamber's reinforced viewport, the stars were gone, washed out by the curvatured glare of Jupiter and the thickening orbital signatures of incoming fleets. Even their shapes, elegant needle ships, fractal armored carriers, membrane-sailed siege barges, couldn't disguise what they really were, overconfident monuments to control. Sarn gestured to the kinetic relay. We've identified their fleet order. Dominion command structure confirmed. Torvin Shal at the head. Bakrel Nuer operating tactical wing, Ulketh Rowan handling comms, Vict added. All accounted for. Put Shal's flagship into frame zone 12, Vol ordered. Let him retrieve our broken bodies. Let him think the war is already done. A low alert tone chirped from Halvek's console. They're broadcasting demand for surrender protocols. Standard Concord posturing. Vol didn't even look at the incoming transmission. Patch them to storage. We'll use the audio later. Halvek smirked. For what? For proof, Vol said. That they offered surrender before understanding what they stepped into. The atmosphere in the chamber thickened, not with fear but with an engineered patience. Every screen glowed with muted blue data streams. Every panel braced under operators who understood that war, real war, didn't begin with a charge. It began when your enemy didn't know they'd already lost. Vol leaned forward and tapped the center of the operations board. Hold all triggers until I give the command. Let them close in. Let them relax. Let them believe. Understood, they echoed. Then he looked toward Halvek again. When Shal sends his next message, forward it to my personal node. I want to hear exactly how a conqueror speaks before he realizes the ground beneath his fleet is false. There was no dramatics, no speeches, no rousing oaths of vengeance. Just coordination. The fleet drew closer, and Vol, watching the news tighten, simply said, prepare everything, because this ends at the point they feel most certain. Target their communication lattice first. If they're blind, they'll die crawling. Sarn Halbek's fingers flew across the control interface, triggering the deployment of sublayer buoy arrays into the asteroid belt. The outer ring of the Sol system flickered in staggered bursts across his heads-up display, marked by specks of blue indicators now detaching from disguised debris clusters. The room around him thrummed not with machinery, but pressure. Tight, unspoken expectation pushing every movement toward irreversible action. He didn't speak again. No need. The operation required precision in action, not dialogue. Outside the command bunker, aboard Fortress Tarson, Neptune's shadow distorted incoming trajectories. A natural veil stretching across the battlefield. Within that cloaked perimeter, the real engagement began. On the Dominion flagship Varkesh Nor, Torvin Shal stepped toward the central display tower, the obsidian column rippling with gravitational relay data. Behind him, the alien officers, 6 species across 4 ranks, kept their expressions tightly calibrated. There was no admiration in the room, only calculation. Earth's defenses were considered obsolete. The show, as they assumed, would be over before broadcast lag could correct itself. Has the human command responded? Shal asked without turning. Negative, replied his signals analyst. No verbal transmission. Their satellites are decaying. One attempted ping, then static. The Admiral's spined jaw shifted. Patch them into the Triumph channel, make it public. Back on Fortress Tarson, Halbek's monitor lit with fresh interference data. Distorted wave patterns wrapped around outbound Dominion frequencies. Vict, he called across the console transmitter. We're inside their transmission spine. They're using standard frequency redundancies, no adaptive encryption. Roran Vic's eyes narrowed as he analyzed the input. Then they'll feel what it's like to hear themselves fail. He input a sequence triggering the first emission of cognitive echo waves. The technology hadn't been designed for warfare. Originally, it was a Terran therapy system used to retrain neural pathways through simulated sound mirroring. Now, it had been rewired to destabilize cognitive interpretation by feeding fragmented memory loops into command networks. As the first burst pulsed through the asteroid belt, several alien cruisers staggered out of formation. Their hulls didn't rupture. Their engines didn't falter. But onboard decision cores, fed false alerts and garbled fleet positions, began to reroute command flow, erratically. Multiple Dominion vessels diverting trajectory, Halvek observed. Some are interpreting phantom collisions. Record all misreads, Vol ordered from the upper rail. I want to know how long it takes before they question their own systems. In the Varkash Nor, a tactical overseer raised his voice, antenna twitching in agitation. 2 cruisers from the Vekran phalanx just initiated emergency turns. They're claiming proximity breach by unknowns. Unknowns? Shal repeated with scorn. There's nothing out here but debris and rocks. Exactly, Commander. Shaw paced toward the main console, where the display now shimmered with irregular node behavior. Red triangles blinked without source verification. Map overlays jittered. Their visual interface didn't crash, but it degraded in a way that unnerved the bridge. Strip the overlay, pull in hardline feeds only, he barked. Hardline inputs corrupted, came the response a moment later. We're seeing latency spikes across all tiers. Shaw's jaw set. This isn't a malfunction. They're doing something. Track down the interference. Back in Tarson's command chamber, Halvek's eyes locked on one particular node. Echo field strength is intensifying. We've got reflection buildup on belt vectors 7 through 9. Veicht turned from his console. They'll realize we're doing this eventually. That's the point, Vol said, walking to the main rail. Make them hesitate, douse the lever, push it until the hinge breaks. Another Dominion ship lurched off course near the edge of Europa's gravitational draw. The vessel's interior lights blinked violently as command sequences began rerouting between primary and secondary decision systems. Autonomous correction nodes sent reverse signals to the bridge, interpreting the crew as a hostile element. The lights inside turned crimson, and the ship rotated mid-drift, now moving perpendicular to formation. First ship compromised, Halvek noted. No weapons fired, no intercept engaged. Vic spoke dryly. That's what erosion looks like when it's accelerated. On board Varkationor, the atmosphere shifted. Even among those trained for war, something felt mismatched. The responses were lagging, just enough to raise doubt. The bridge didn't feel operational. It felt misaligned. Shal gritted his teeth. Dispatch intercept drones, sweep the asteroid belt, flush out whatever they've embedded in the terrain. His second-in-command hesitated. Would you like to coordinate with the Solvik wing before? Do it, Shal snapped. The drones launched from lateral tubes, cutting toward the belt like spear points through wool. They passed broken trade buoys, old signal towers, and drifting satellite cores. All inactive, all irrelevant. At least, that's what the scans returned. Then a ripple. One drone's feed went black, followed by a cascade of error beacons across the swarm. No explosions, no shrapnel, just stream interruption, signal loopbacks, and loss of behavioral data. Swarm link severed, came the call from Dominion Signal Ops. They're not targeting weapons, muttered Halvek, watching the chaos build across the interface. They're targeting coherence. In that moment, Earth's strategy unfolded not through force, but through cognitive destabilization. No fire was exchanged, no alarm shrieked, but across the coalition's forward fleet something more dangerous occurred. Commanders began to disagree with their own navigation systems. Fleet formations drifted out of alignment. Communications became fragmented. Trust in the central node, trust in reality, started to dissolve. Vol, Halleck said, eyes still locked on the scrolling data. We can breach their command chain in under 15 minutes if the spread continues. Let them struggle, Vol said calmly. The longer they try to fix it, the more knots they tie themselves into. The Dominion flagship dimmed its internal lighting as diagnostics rebooted core functions for the third time in 5 minutes. Shaw leaned in over his shoulder display, watching an emergency update cascade in reverse order, protocols replaying out of sequence. Something's wrong with the structure of our command logic. his overseer said quietly. It's as if something's reflecting orders backwards. Shaw's expression flattened. Get me Noor. I want every decision revalidated through the core deck. No AI interpretation. If we're being played, I want human, or equivalent, eyes on every transmission. Antares and Vol gave a slight nod. They'll go manual, as expected. Next move? Asked Talvek. Disrupt the fallback, Vol said. Break their chain from both ends. Cognitive first, then kinetic. Trigger window opens in 74 seconds, Dravlorn said, eyes locked on the geological feedback stream scrolling across the angular heads-up slab mounted above his field station. A storm of copper dust lashed the glass from the outside. Every grain charged with static and years of neglect. The Martian basin hadn't been touched by human boots since the last trade outpost burned down. Or at least that's what the conquered fleet intelligence believed. In truth, Lorne never left. Not physically, not mentally. He'd been stitching this entire graveyard together, node by node, for the past 15 years. He pulled on his environmental mask, the inside reeking faintly of old rubber and recycled moisture. Cycle primary detonators. Layer them by vector spread, topsoil first. Let the tremors move before the collapse starts. His technician, a narrow-framed man named Kavek, adjusted the sync controls with a quiet nod. Magnetic filament lines synced. Subcrust pulse wells, waiting for directional flux confirmation. The smell inside the station was dry stone and machine grease. Real smells, not synthetics. The walls vibrated under shallow seismic ripples, the planet breathing before the rupture. Above them, Dominion skiffs cut through the thinning atmosphere. Sleek, armor-scaled, triangular. They landed without resistance. They always did when the enemy believed they'd already won. Their landing gears pressed into Martian dust with a hiss. The kind that only raw displacement could produce, as if the planet itself were bracing against invasion. Payload 3 is armed, Kavek confirmed, stepping back from the console. They've landed square on ignition point. Lorne checked the altitude markers, then narrowed his eyes. Let the lead ships deploy first. Give them 30 seconds. Let weight compound. Out in the basin, the alien troops formed into search formations. Scanners extended from back-mount poles, walking into zones mapped to appear as former industrial zones. Mining fields, abandoned tunnels, subthermal exhaust ridges. They scanned everything. They understood nothing. From above, another pair of dropships descended. Their sides bore the insignia of the Solbak Command Corps, a species known for pattern recognition and orbital infrastructure sabotage. They believed themselves immune to deception. Lorne adjusted a dial. Thermogenic feedback nodes primed. We go on my count. Kavak hesitated. We're detonating on active troop presence? That's the point, Lorne answered. Their biotracers will register an internal failure. They'll think it was their gear. They'll question their landing diagnostics, not our design. The first layer ruptured under Sector Theta. A low-frequency pulse coursed through the soil, shaking the observation deck. Dust bloomed in controlled columns, followed by a shifting roar from beneath, like subterranean waves pushing through the rock in all directions. The dropships nearest the blast wobbled as magnetic equilibrium stuttered in their stabilizers. Soldiers stumbled. Instruments failed. Kavak checked the slab again. Trigger 1 complete. Second wave in 10 seconds. Lorne looked up through the reinforced viewport. Watch for the blue. The next pulse wasn't noise. It was structure failure masked as geological anomaly. Entire crustal plates, weakened over years of disguised core tapping, collapsed inward. Not explosively. Surgically. Controlled fault lines detonated from 20 meters below. Terrain that had looked unassuming, now buckled like old paper, submerged in fire. The second dropship split mid-air, one half cartwheeling into a shattered ridge, the other slamming into a crater with a muted impact. Its reactor didn't detonate. Its command link died before it could broadcast distress. Above, Mars's moons dimmed in the filtered visor as orbital fuel depots, seemingly abandoned for decades, bloomed into trails of brief blue ignition. The magnetic fields set off a chain reaction, compressed plasma storage rupturing without fire, just implosion and scatter. Debris rained into the upper atmosphere, not as shrapnel but as jamming nodes, waiting to confuse long-range targeting. "They'll think the storms did it," Kevok said. "They'll think wrong," Lorne replied, turning his focus to the final trigger sequence. A Dominion commander on the ground, gold-plated, heavy-helmed, called for recalibration drones. He pointed toward the remaining ridge, unaware it housed a dormant antimatter stabilizer designed to collapse once surveyed. They launched a reconnaissance bot. It ascended 30 meters, paused, then vanished in a flash of directional magnetic inversion. Not an explosion, just absence. Within 2 minutes, 5 battalions lost position, 6 support craft failed to launch, and tactical overlays in the orbiting fleet went black at the Mars node. No one could explain it. No one had even fired a weapon. Back in the control bunker, Kavek exhaled shakily. "Command overlay confirms complete misread from enemy tracking. Their satellites are reading Mars as tectonically unstable. They'll avoid further landings," Lorne said, locking down the console. "Ashfall Phase 1 complete on planetary surface. Time to hand it over to orbital." A ping sounded from the comms relay. Halvek's face appeared on the slab, overlay blue, text indicators surrounding his image. "Ground phase successful." "Buried themselves," Lorne replied. "We just let the soil finish the job." Halvek's expression didn't change. "Your window's closing, Dominion support vectors redirecting toward your orbital path." "I'm already gone," Lorne said, removing his ID chip and inserting it into the neural core backup. "Transmit uplink to Tarson. I want command to begin kinetic bluffing on the asteroid line." Kavak glanced toward the vault door. "And the Mars core?" Lorne didn't look back. "We leave it running. If they come back, they deserve what's waiting." As he stepped through the reinforced hatchway into the evac tube, the console behind him initiated the fallback subroutine. No alarms. No countdowns. Just a recursive loop, silently rewriting all outbound transmissions with false telemetry. Mars would appear abandoned again. L took the bait. "All 6 echo frames are inside their cruisers," Vic announced without lifting his gaze from the heads-up slab. His tone lacked celebration. This wasn't triumph. It was tracking. Inside the cold glow of the Cyber Warfare Command Vault, the air carried a filtered taste of aged coolant and burnt polymer. Light pulsed low and rhythmic from the embedded floor plates, as if the ground itself was part of the processing rhythm. The chamber was shaped not for comfort but isolation, thick-walled and sunk beneath Fortress Tarson's hardened core, where no accidental broadcast could escape and no interference could sneak in. Rohr and Vic leaned toward the neural interface, each gesture triggering sequences that unfolded across the command matrix. Frame signal integrity confirmed. Entry protocols engaging in 2, 1. Kavak's image flickered on a remote feed from Mars Control, transferring last-minute environmental overlays to update the payload alignment for orbit teching. Vic ignored it. His world for now was reduced to transmission ladders, corruptible stacks, and cascading commands threaded with syntactical decay. Above Mars, 6 Dominion cruisers had retrieved what appeared to be Terran civilian escape pods, each broadcasting distress patterns, old Alliance authentication codes, and biosigns matching Terran survivors. In truth, the biosigns were data loops, synthetic readings recorded from real bodies decades ago and recompiled into survivable narrative fragments. The pods were not vessels. They were keys. Beak zoomed in on Cruiser 12 Zarek. Its outer bay had opened and docked the object with full clearance. Protocols dictated full quarantine, but the ship's commander, seeing human life readings and radiation scores at survivable levels, had overridden the restriction. The moment the pod touched the internal relay dock, Vic's screen lit with mirrored command trees. Echo Frame 12 active, he stated flatly. Uplink complete. Sub-perimeter spoof chains replicating. Sarn Halvek's voice cut in over the link. How long before their routing collapses? That depends, Vict replied, fingers hovering. If they run diagnostic filters, 15 minutes. If they trust their data, we own them in 3. The Echo Frames weren't viruses. They didn't scream through systems or overload cores. They rewrote logic. Subtly, an admiral would request a fleet shift, and his comm node would reroute that order to another ship's logistics handler. A missile request might register as a call for navigation realignment. Systems functioned, but nothing flowed where it should. Vike didn't want to crash their infrastructure. He wanted it to continue functioning, misleadingly. On the Dominion flagship Varkesh Nor, command priority transmissions began echoing back to their originators. Torvin Shaw frowned as his directive to reposition Sector Wing Alpha returned as a status confirmation for engine coolant discharge. He ran it again. Same result. Run a cross-center validation. Confirm vector integrity across the control matrix. His technician nodded, teeth grinding. Fleet movements are responding, just not to us. Tactical telemetry appears inverted. Define inverted. Ships are receiving commands, but from lateral nodes. It's mimicking hierarchy without real linkage. Horvin Shal exhaled through his gills. We're being funneled by our own map. Back on Tarson, Vict highlighted Fleet Cluster 14. Frame Tree 7 has rerouted conflict zones. Their eastern line is now targeting their own supply haulers. Priority code shifted. Sarn muttered. They'll think it's an internal error. VI already do, Vict answered. They're trying to fix what isn't broken because they don't realize it's been rebuilt. He watched another reroute. 2 Dominion carriers adjusted position based on forged threat vectors. Their revised movement placed them directly in front of a Phalanx cruiser, which initiated a threat lock and opened kinetic discharge rounds into their hulls, not because of aggression, because their threat systems showed an unauthorized warp gate forming in the wrong position. I'm marking 12 confirmed fratricide events, Pig noted. No external engagement, 0 Terran fire. Timber. Halvek chimed in again. Will they trace the interference? Eventually. But we didn't install interference, we altered truth. That's harder to track. Vict walked across the platform, eyes moving over a bank of split feeds. The heads-up slab now showed 5 Dominion vessels rotating away from the Martian orbit into false coordinates broadcasted from Echo Frame 9. He activated the audio overlay. Crew screaming, not from fear but confusion. Pilots who no longer trusted their own dashboards. Commanders ordering systems offline only to find them already locked by ghosted executive codes. They're suffocating in their own process, Vict murmured. Halvek laughed, dry and humorless. This is what vengeance looks like when it wears a clipboard. Vict didn't smile. This isn't vengeance, it's instruction. On board the cruiser Zarek, the first officer tried to access the visual feed for an external docking clamp. It returned, but the angle was wrong. The pod wasn't on the outer wall. It appeared to be inside the command corridor. He blinked, requested diagnostics, then froze. The pod was nowhere. It had never physically breached the internal perimeter. Because the Echo Frame wasn't on board. It was already in the ship's logic web, invisible, commanding, rewriting. Admiral, he whispered. I think we've let something in. Above them, the fleet flickered. Dozens of ships began to drift, slowly at first, then with purpose, following coordinate instructions that no commander had approved. Their velocity matched trajectory routes previously cached for resupply. But those had been wiped 2 cycles ago. So why were they reloading? Vict watched as Cruiser 17 Verne executed a sharp portside pitch to avoid an inbound signal it identified as hostile. That signal had come from Cruiser 19 Gulresh, one of its own escorts. Gulresh, unaware of being flagged, continued forward. Verne discharged a barrage of scatter rounds, 19 seconds later, the first confirmed kill between Dominion units was recorded by their own fleet AI. That's 12 collisions and 5 more preparing to engage, Vike said. They're losing confidence in their architecture. What's your command tree integrity on the rest of the frames? Vol's voice entered now, clipped and direct. 9%. Frame 10 corrupted. Due to manual firewall rollback, we lost that node. Acceptable. Begin seeding frame 11s across secondary vectors. Set them loose in recovered wreckage. They'll think they're rescuing survivors. Dick nodded. Broadcasting now. The pods launched again, this time from deep debris clouds. To the enemy, they looked like miracle survivors, escaped from Mars, drifting helplessly, emitting weak biosigns. To Vict, they were his extensions. Knives with smiles painted on the hilts. Identify that signature, now. The Dominion fleet commander's shout crackled across an already fractured comnet. His order reached no one. The command relay, corrupted by echo frame interference and swollen by competing priority routes, split the message into 5 conflicting instructions. One copy rerouted to a medical frigate marked as neutral, another reclassified it as hostile fire. The rest simply looped in place, flashing unknown error codes on mismatched dashboards. On board the cruiser Tolvec Narn, weapons officer Trevec tapped his console, sweat dripping from his upper jawline. The screen flickered with overlapping identifiers. Friendlies turning red, enemy signals blinking off, then on again, marked with no allegiance. His heads-up display showed the nearest support ship, Zekon Vess, moving into targeting range without transponder clearance. Captain, Trail said, voice taut. Zekhan's beacons aren't registering. Our targeting system marked it hostile. The captain, a 4-limbed Karen tactician named Jex Ruhr, paced to the main console. Override. That's a supply craft. They're running evac. Already tried. The console locked out live override. It's using old warpath protocols. Autonomous counterfire is engaged. Disarm the battery. Too late. A shock pulse tore through the Tolvec Narn side cannons. They ignited with a short, brutal discharge. The medship, still uploading recovery data from Mars, detonated mid-course. Emergency pods ejected, then blinked out as the corrupted network misclassified them as incoming missiles. From afar, the Varkesh Noor command bridge saw it all unfold, on delay, and out of context. Torvin Schall's claws flexed on the railing as 3 more pings lit up across the outer edge of the Dominion formation. One was a fuel barge. Another was a long-range jammer vessel en route to reinforce flank command. Both disintegrated under friendly fire. Get me Fleet Group Sigma, he ordered. The comms officer, an insectotech with trembling antennae, worked his interface. No return ping, routing looped back. Their channels are talking to each other, not us. Schall growled low. That doesn't happen. No, sir, the officer replied. Not without sabotage, Schall finished. Back on Fortress Tarson, Sarn Halvek rotated the data overlay on the heads-up slab, watching with clinical detachment as Dominion fire patterns morphed across the Sol grid. We've reached reflexive collapse. They're hitting targets without confirmation, then correcting with more misfires. Vike adjusted the spread of frame 11s seated among recovered debris. Their system is gasping for order. Every attempt to self-correct deepens the algorithmic drift. Then we're past the failover, Sarn said. Long past. The fleet data replayed in real time. One cruiser rerouted toward what it believed was a high-yield reactor leak. An echo frame-generated decoy marked with high-threat priority. Upon approach, its internal nav system triggered collision avoidance with a phantom object. The maneuver turned it directly into a transport line, colliding with 2 fighters and spinning into a Dominion command frigate's underhull. None of them had engaged a human ship. The crew of Ultek Vor, a battle cruiser assigned to command grid operations, sat motionless as their AI refused to acknowledge their input. They watched enemy flags vanish, replaced by blank icons. Then their own ships reappeared, classified as unidentified threats. Auto defense turrets began targeting their own shielding arrays. The captain screamed for a shutdown. His order never left the ship. The transmitter redirected his command packet to a weather satellite that no longer existed. 10 seconds later, the cruiser self-corrected by severing its forward communications mast. It thought it had purged a foreign protocol. It had, in fact, cut itself off completely. Back in the Dominion rear line, Admiral Rech Tun stared at the tactical feed flowing through his personal visor array. It made no sense. His ships weren't responding. Orders bounced back, feedback loops twisted commands into static. He saw attack icons overlaid on his own ships, placed there by his fleet's own sensors. "This isn't combat," he muttered, eyes widening. "It's corrosion." Torvald Schall received the transmission a moment later. "We've lost command. Rech is falling back. He's abandoning you," Veicht said to no one in particular, watching from Tarson. Halbech stood motionless. "Schall will pull his ships into tighter formation. He always does when pressed." "Then we'll make him pay for trusting proximity," Veicht answered, inputting new command overlays. "Let Echo 6 adjust friendly recognition to region-timed fades. Make their formations cannibalize themselves." On board Varkesh Nor, Torvald Schall ordered a compression shift. Ships aligned tighter, meant to tighten defensive formations and restore fleet discipline. But proximity triggered recognition lag. As one ship realigned, the next misread it as an encroaching threat. 2 opened fire. 1 dodged. The 4th panicked and clipped a reactor hull during an evasive surge. In less than 3 minutes, 17 Dominion ships initiated engagements against their own allies. None of them realized it wasn't external sabotage anymore. They believed they were correcting internal betrayal. Vole entered the command floor of Tarson as the data spread rolled into full breakdown metrics. "Push into their reinforcement nodes. Let their command think the betrayal is coming from deep ranks. Force a purge." Soren Helveg pivoted toward the fleet injection panel. "Setting rogue protocols. They'll believe their rear guard has flipped. Feed it into their hierarchy. It's already eating them from both ends." Red and blue markers blinked furiously across the simulation feed. Ships changed classification every 5 seconds. Emergency escape pods were tagged as invasion drones. Crew broadcasts were encrypted mid-transmission, then misread as coded mutiny plans. Schall slammed his hand into the primary rail. "If they're compromised, we cut them loose. Lock down all outer sectors. No answers, no excuses." The officer nearest to him, young, inexperienced, hesitated. "That would mean firing on our own wounded." "Then fire faster." On Tarson, Soren Helveg observed the change. "He just broke his fleet in 2. They're not recovering from this." Vole didn't smile. "Make sure they know who gave the order. Collapse Sector 12. Seal off the retreat vectors. Don't leave them options." Derek Vole didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The words dropped into the command deck like iron, triggering 3 officers into motion. The wreckage corridor above Earth's orbit had thickened, each fragment strategically rerouted, not by brute force, but by subtle gravitational nudges, proximity mass drift shifts, and layered beacon falsifications. From the outside it looked like debris, from the inside it was a cage. The viewing dome cast a hazy blue across the main operations floor. Orbitals spun overhead, blinking with cold light. No gunfire, no warning, just wreckage drifting slow and purposeful. Ships torn in half from earlier fratricide, fractured mining hulks, and old station cores long thought decommissioned. But each object held a purpose. Reflect signals, deflect scanners, distort tracking data. Soren Helveg paced across the rail, reviewing density overlays on the heads-up slab. "We've reached full curvature choke at geostationary layer. Reinforcements are trying to push through the southern gap. Karn-class carriers mostly. Redirect mass cluster from Band 8, Vole replied. Block the exit. Don't let them breach the corridor." Below them, in the orbital shell between Earth and Luna, the enemy ships twisted against the trap. Engines flared in tight arcs, pushing against nothing, chasing void where there used to be space. Each attempt to break free nudged them deeper into the tangled graveyard. Dominion pilots had no idea they were being guided, herded like prey, into narrowing lanes filled with what they mistook for dead steel. Vol watched the real-time feed as the Solvok flagship skimmed past an old cargo hauler. A beacon blinked once. Harmless. Meaningless. The Solvok commander ignored it. 3 seconds later, a drift mine tether activated from the underside of the debris. A low-yield directional pulse surged through its magnetic spine, flipping the hauler end over end into the path of the trailing warship. Both vessels collided, not explosively but catastrophically, crushing superstructures, tangling cores, spilling energy into the grid. 2 more down, Halvek reported. The wreckage is folding in on itself. People built their doctrine on forward momentum. Vol muttered, now they're trapped by what they abandoned. Director Veicht entered from the lower bay, his face cast in the ambient light of a pulsing beacon display. Echo frame feed confirms full isolation. Outer rim command is severed. No way to relay extraction or receive backup routing. They'll try to fight their way out, Vol said. Or turn on each other. Make sure we see both. Veicht nodded, tapping commands into the central panel. Data streamed across the rightmost slab, black and red signals flaring as internal ship systems recalibrated in a panic, unaware that most external movement data had been looped. The orbit to the Dominion fleet had become an ever-shifting maze of false exits. Outside, the scene resembled a broken halo. Dozens of ships spiraled between rings of wreckage. Some moved in packs. Others drifted alone, power conservation modes activated too late to preserve maneuverability. A transport veered left and clipped the protruding frame of a drift buoy. The impact sheared its tail. Emergency stabilizers kicked in, except the nav unit misread the spin vector, overcompensated and drove the ship into a dismantled defense relay. They're panicking, Halvek observed. We think this is debris. They don't realize they're navigating our design, Veicht answered. A battleship, Arcanthrall, accelerated hard to break from the upper orbit. It banked through what it assumed was a clean lane. Instead, magnetic tether mines activated, drawn not by proximity triggers, but by the ship's own emissions. The gravlocks pulled inward, collapsing with lethal force. Hull sections bent inward like paper soaked in oil. The vessel broke apart mid-turn. In the command chamber, no one spoke. It wasn't shock. It wasn't awe. It was mechanics, systems doing what they were built to do. Sarn Halvek adjusted the proximity telemetry display. That was their 4th largest capital vessel. Send fragments toward their command post, Vol ordered. Make them watch it drift by. Down below, within the tangled maze of orbit, an alien destroyer fired at random. Desperation arcs, not targeted salvos. The blasts pinged off scavenged Terran wrecks. Another ship misinterpreted the pattern as a lock-on attempt and retaliated. 30 seconds later, 5 ships converged on what they assumed was a Terran ambush. They fired on each other. Don't block their view of Earth, Vol said. I want every survivor in orbit to look down and realize where they are. The planet below was untouched. Pristine blue, streaked with clouds, continents lit by infrared arrays beneath the clouds. No global bombardment, no devastation, just waiting. They expected a last stand, Halvek murmured. They expected to be remembered as conquerors. They'll be remembered as noise, Vol replied. In orbit, a Solvek reinforcement unit began retreat procedures. Their exit path fed through 3 of their own destroyed cruisers. Wreckage drifted in patterns too consistent to be chance, held together by low-level grav anchors massed as dead satellites. As the reinforcements pushed forward, proximity pings flared. They slowed, scanned, debated. By then it was too late. 2 support ships collided mid-burn. The others turned to escape the spreading debris. They flew straight into the inbound wreckage corridor, closing from behind. Veicht's voice was steady. Orbit kill zone integrity sustained. They've turned inwards. We're watching breakdown in chain of command. They're arguing by code. Let them, Vol said. The noose tightens on its own. From above it looked like a sculpture, circular arcs of shattered hulls, flares fading between blackened husks, beacon lights blinking in a pattern no outsider could read. Transmit no warnings, no messages, no threats, Vol added. Helvek tilted his head. What do we tell them? Nothing, Vol said. Let them realize they were never invited. Select 1 dreadnoughts, strip the rest. Dayrik Vol gave the order without looking up. The command bridge was dimmed for contrast, not drama. The overhead heads-up slabs filtered orbital telemetry and converted threat routes into sharp angular overlays. Earth rotated calmly beneath them, untouched, while the debris halo pulsed with residual warning beacons and structural fragments, arranged like a noose freshly dropped. Sarn Halvek ran calculations on the orbit decay patterns. Vessel Triarch Volune, Zarveth Fleet, mid-tier command ship, minimal external damage, drive still functional. Their outer hull integrity could support what we're about to do. Vike scanned its comm latency. Crew numbers estimated between 700 and 900. Most of their bridge links are already rerouted by Echo Bleed. They can watch, they can't act. And that's the one, Vol said. Commence hull engagement. Specialized drones, disguised as scrap reconfiguration bots, detached from inert Earth platforms and moved toward the dreadnought, like vultures picking clean a carcass that wasn't quite dead. Each drone drilled shallow contact points along the vessel's dorsal plates. No explosives, no invasive tech. Just cutters, etchers, and relays that worked fast. Within 90 seconds, the massive hull bore a mark. Long black slashes, arranged in angular Terran script. No decorative lines, no emblem. Just words. We were already ready, Sarn muttered. They'll scan that before they repair their own navigation. That's the point, Vol said. Every survivor will read it in passing, and every council that receives this ship's report will have to file it as evidence. One more drone affixed a reflector dish to the dreadnought's stern, not for communication but for guidance. A small propulsion core embedded into the dish activated, using gravity assist logic from Earth's rotation and lunar alignment. The dreadnought began to drift, not in retreat, but in transit. Victor verified trajectory on the upper heads-up grid. Vector path laid, destination, conquered assembly midpoint. It'll take 4 cycles, Halvek said. Let it drift slow, Vol replied. Terror moves better when no one's steering it. On board Triarch Volune, the crew remained frozen. Their internal feeds blinked with corrupted readouts and fractured telemetry. None of them fired. None attempted to resist. They simply watched from fractured viewports and embedded slabs as the drones finished their work, detached, and vanished back into the wreck field. In the Concord Council chamber 4 systems away, a live broadcast streamed from a third-party relay station that had picked up the propulsion signature of the outbound dreadnought. Delegates gathered around a projection tower as a feed unraveled across their embedded floor grid. The ship spun slowly. Markings visible, no damage from enemy fire, no external Terran transmission. The engraved message triggered automated translation across a dozen languages. In the back of the chamber, a veteran war advisor whispered to no one in particular. They didn't just survive. They planned to be attacked. A Solvac economic minister muttered, this wasn't war. This was jurisprudence, carried out by Mies. The Karen strategist in attendance, pale and trembling, simply said, they made an example of all of us. Inside the Triarch Volune, bridge lights dimmed, not from damage, from programming. Terran code had overridden the atmosphere regulators to dim periodically as a psychological cue. Crew schedules reset themselves to 24-hour Earth Standard cycles. Rehydration tanks, flooded with rations labeled in Terran syntax. There was no takeover, just subtle reminders of who now dictated order. Halvek watched the outbound feed from Tarson. They'll try to dissect the code later, think it was propaganda, they'll spin it. Vol's expression didn't shift. Doesn't matter, we didn't send it for interpretation. We sent it so they'd never stop thinking about it. Vike ran secondary alignment logs. All surrounding wreckage has been cleaned. No active traps remain in orbit. Let the galaxy think Earth has returned to normal. Keep the illusion, Vol said. We want them to wonder if this was everything, or just the first layer. The dreadnought moved farther from Earth, its vector aligning through a clean corridor carved in the aftermath of destruction. No escort followed, no communication returned. It became a beacon, not in function, but in memory. Vol turned away from the screen. Begin lockdown of all active protocols. Archive Ashfall permanently. Halvek hesitated. You want to seal it? No. I want to end it. What needed to be said has already been written in their steel. Lock the doctrine under level red authorization. No addendums, no appeals. Derek Vol didn't look at the signatures sliding across the verification slab. One by one, the remaining unified command officers encoded their approval. Sarn Halvek keyed in his clearance last, not hesitating, not blinking. The final confirmation pulsed once, then vanished from the display. No anthem followed, no declarations of triumph, just the weighted stillness of something finished. Earth's orbital fields were quiet now, not empty, still layered with wreckage and blackened hulls, but unmoving. The dreadnought had already crossed the Saturn line, its propulsion coil throwing it deeper into Concord space. The message had been sent. This was the response. Vic stepped into the chamber with a datapad containing the final draft. Full dissemination protocols complete. Core packet routed to every neutral, aligned, or formerly hostile system. Broadcast staggered across 13 trade corridors and 5 BlackNet information routes. Response traffic? Halvek asked. None, Bicht said. No retort, no inquiry, not even denials. Then they heard us, Vol said. The doctrine of final engagement was brief. No summaries, no backstory. One paragraph only. Earth does not request peace. It does not recognize surrender. All who trespass will be nullified by automated contingency. This is not threat. This is design. Attached below it was Earth's new emblem, a blank black circle. Sarn stared at it for a moment. We removed everything. No flags, no claims. Vicht replied. It's not a symbol. It's absence. Across every known star chart, Sol was reclassified. Navigation systems redrew trade routes without instruction. Civilian vessels began rerouting away from the solar system as if it no longer existed. On diplomatic stations, Earth's name was shadow-tagged with 2 words. Unapproachable territory. At the Concord Assembly, advisors watched the drift of Triarch Valoon. Its hull still bore the engraved message. No signals came from it, no Terran feed. It simply moved. Slow, constant, visible. Like a warning buoy wrapped in hull armor, a Karen envoy stood at the edge of the chamber. They didn't defend their system. They redefined the cost of entry. In Fortress Tarsin's command level, Vol descended alone into Archive Layer 9. The lights dimmed not from flare, but efficiency. No one else followed. He approached the Master Key Vault, inserted the override, and triggered permanent deactivation. Erase Ashfall from our systems, he said over a closed channel. Not archived, deleted. Vic's voice came through quietly. Understood, purge protocol initiated. One by one, Earth's trap architecture shut down. Not because it was spent, but because it had succeeded. He returned to the upper deck as Halvek and Vict reviewed the final status. All grid forks show null, Halvek reported. Every fleet rig, every decoy relay, every mine has ceased transmission. Then we've ended it, Vol said. And there's nothing left to explain. Vict walked beside him down the corridor lined with sealed doors and inert consoles. They'll theorize, rewrite history, frame us as monsters, or saviors. Let them try, Vol replied. Halvek joined them at the last lift. What do we become now, he asked. Memory, Vol said. The kind they check before they act. They stepped inside. As the lift closed, Vol turned and halted it with a quick command. One last transmission, he said. He reactivated a dormant comm slab, routed it through a blind satellite repeater just beyond lunar range, and opened a private channel. Unsecured, unencrypted, untitled. He leaned forward and spoke. You built an empire by counting your enemies. You counted wrong. He sent the transmission. No outro, no tag, just the message. That single sentence traveled farther than any declaration. Within hours, it pinged off salvage nets, black net relays, and fringe colonies. It reached pirates, traders, and low-level bureaucrats who didn't even know a war had happened. And now, they knew how it ended. In the Concord archive, Earth's record file was updated one final time. 3 words. Engagement not advised. Vol turned from the console and rejoined the others. We don't need to vanish, he said to Helvek and Vict. We need to exist in their nightmares. That's our shield now. Then, for the first time, he looked out at Earth. Not as a soldier, but as a warning, written in orbit. If humanity ever disappears from the stars again, it won't be because someone made us. It'll be because we chose never to warn you twice.